As of writing this review, I'm 37 years old. As a kid, I was the prime age for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mania, and when the game started releasing, I just about lost my mind. Particularly the arcade game, which became the template for years of Ninja Turtles games. Time went on and TMNT got its reboots, which came with their own more modern games. Some finding their footing and others not so much, but in the years since, there has been a resurgence of beat-em-ups. We've seen a return to form for the genre, from your Scott Pilgrims to your Streets of Rage 4, the latter which is also released by publisher Dotemu. Side note, here's a thing just for funsies regarding Streets of Rage 4. I tweeted out that I hoped the team behind the game would be able to work on a Turtles game. Well, different developer but same publisher, so I'm taking half a point. Ignore the typo. And the fact that the parent company has changed its name. I said this was for funsies, get off my back. Anyway, with the release of Shredder's Revenge, the Ninja Turtles have finally returned to the format in which they prospered with throwback pixel art and a bangin' soundtrack. For those who want a classic arcade experience, this is exactly what you'd expect. Fast and frantic combat as you traverse screen to screen until you reach a boss and then boom, levels over onto the next. The basic premise remains the same, but there's more under the hood here. From bringing back the 80s animated series voice talent,
so what now, fearless leader,
to filling out the roster of playable characters with Splinter, April, and Casey Jones, there's more you can latch onto, but the real standouts are the story mode and updated combat. Let's start with the former. Story mode contextualizes your arcade adventure with an overworld, upgrades, collectibles and cameos, and the ability to replay levels you've already beaten without having to play through the ones that precede it. You can also choose your difficulty level for an experience that feels more forgiving than the traditional arcade mode, and you don't have to worry about your digital quarters getting eaten. The overworld, in a lovely nod, harkens back to the first game in the series, which predates the Brawler blueprint. Combat feels familiar but modern. Controls are updated but fairly simple to grasp. Don't get me wrong, you can definitely still mash your way through this game if you so choose, but there's just enough modernization to add a little more complexity. It's no longer just an attack and jump with a special when you hit both buttons at the same time. There's multiple specials with better grappling, and just a little tip here, you're going to want to make friends with the dodge mechanic. It will save your shell when you're overrun with too many enemies on screen to jump away. It helps reinforce the message that this is an updated version of the games we played back then, rather than something completely new with the same IP. Multiplayer co-op also recaptures a feeling that is hard to replicate outside of a dimly lit arcade. Discovering things alongside your friends or cluing them into a move or technique they haven't figured out yet is simple but satisfying and helps establish that throwback vibe. On the flip side, online multiplayer does have an issue, and it's in connectivity. Despite both myself and the friend I was playing with being hardwired in, our pings were in the red, and it caused enemies to either stay on screen in a distressed pose after being defeated, or in the case of one boss fight, go completely invisible and lose their hitbox entirely. Though they were able to send out their special attack, which could still cause damage to me. Speaking of bosses, I could have used one less Bebop and Rocksteady fight, as they're a quarter of the boss fights, including 2 solo and 2 team-up battles. It's just a lot of them in the first half of the game, and just a bit more variety would have been welcome. When first announced, I was mixed on the art design. My hopes were with a more hand-drawn style a la Streets of Rage 4, and so seeing the pixel art that leans more heavily into Game Boy Advance than the arcade game wasn't quite what I was looking for, but I'm able to admit, since they were going back to the 1987 cartoon for inspiration, it made sense, and playing through it now, I think they made the right call. Sprites are beautifully realized, particularly when it comes to the oversized bosses. T-Lopes runs wild on the soundtrack, and while I think it's still second to his Sonic Mania soundtrack, he brings extremely high energy and special guests ranging from folks familiar in the gaming community like Mega Ran to heavy hitters like Raekwon and Ghostface Killah from the GD Wu-Tang Clan. All of these updates and flourishes, they're icing on the pizza cake because Shredder's Revenge keeps its core a blend of nostalgia and stellar, straightforward game design. It keeps one two-toed foot in the past and another in the present, and in that, it does not falter. Hopefully we'll see more TMNT from this team, whether it's in the form of DLC or a sequel, because I'd love to see more heroes and villains come into play. Give us Usagi Yojimbo and Ace Duck, you cowards. But whether you're a longtime Ninja Turtles fan like me, or just looking for a fun time with an approachable game, Shredder's Revenge is an outstanding option for you. Play it.
Let's kick some shit!